Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Her Silent Howl. Episode 4. Celeste POV. I flinched as Drive West took some blood. Well, my dear, I don't see anything wrong with you. I think you just haven't been getting rest. You lost a bit of weight. Have you been eating properly? He asked. I shifted nervously, not wanting to look at anyone. To lie? Markus asked. A hint of suspicion in his eyes, letting me know that he would be able to tell if I lied to him. I sighed. Yes, but sometimes I forget to eat. I used to eat half a meal a day. I feel bloated when I eat too much and I want to throw up. I have been eating by myself this past week, so instead of grabbing a full dinner, I just eat a fruit instead, I said. Markus stiffened at my words but didn't say anything. I could feel anger coming off him now that I had lowered the wall I didn't know I had put there. Well, with your history, we need to make a bigger effort to eat. Your body needs all the nutrients it can get. You were getting better and we seem to have backstepped a bit. I know it takes your stomach a little while to get used to not being empty, but you need to push through it. We need our Luna healthy and strong. I am going to give you some melatonin for sleeping. It's a natural medication so it shouldn't upset your stomach. I am also going to suggest you drink some calming tea about an hour before bedtime so it will help you get a restful sleep. I will send this blood work to the lab and let you know if I see anything out of the normal when the results come back, he said and I nodded. Come Tulai, let's get some breakfast, then you and I will be spending the day together. Markus wrapped his arm around my waist and led me out of the hospital. We went into the kitchen as Mrs. Wendell was cleaning up. She usually assisted Mrs. Riley with the food. Do we have everything we need for pancakes? Markus asked as he led me to a seat on the counter. Oh, I can whip some up for you, Alpha, Mrs. Wendell said, starting to pull some pots out of the cupboards. No, I want to cook for my Luna. You've done a lot this morning already. Just take a break, he said as he escorted her out of the kitchen. I smiled at him as he came back out and started rummaging through the pantry. He took out his phone and started looking up a recipe. I tried not to laugh, knowing he was trying to be sweet. Do you need some help? I asked. No, I am cooking for you. You just sit there and eat some raspberries while I cook, he said as he pulled some fruit from the fridge and put it in front of me. I leaned back on my chair and watched him. This is going to be a disaster, isn't it? Kara asked, giggling inside my head. Oh yeah, I said. 20 minutes later, I watched a flustered Markus try to flip his fourth pancake. I was trying my best not to laugh. He had flour everywhere and on everything, including himself. I can hear Atlas growling. I think they are fighting over how to make a proper pancake, Kara laughed. Markus, I said tentatively. I could hear him muttering to himself angrily. I went over to the freezer and grabbed some frozen waffles I'd bought for the Omegas in case they missed breakfast while doing their duties. I gently grabbed his hand and pulled him around. He had flour on his nose and looked defeated. I let out a small giggle. He sighed, I am a failure of a person. I can't even cook a pancake. I laughed and shook my head. You just need the right tool, I said and shook the box of frozen waffles lightly. He laughed and tried to hug me, but I ducked and ran to the other end of the counter. He looked slightly hurt at my actions, but I just laughed and shook my head. You're not hugging me with half a pound of flour all over you. He looked down and it was like it was the first time he noticed the state of his clothes. He laughed and then got a really mischievous look on his face. Oh, but mate, we need to hold you. It is our right. He and Atlas' voice were mixing together. Oh, mate loves the chase. Let's give him a challenge. Kara encouraged and I didn't need telling twice. I ran out the door and out the packhouse squealing. I took my shirt off, it was my favorite, and shifted and Kara ran for our lives, Atlas hot on our tail. He was fast, but we were faster. We dashed into the woods and out the other end. Atlas would occasionally gain on us, but we made it to the river without getting caught. We stopped at the edge and Atlas came barreling into us, unable to stop in time. We rolled down the embankment with a bunch of yelps from our wolves. We finally landed at the edge of the river with an oof. Kara was shaking the dirt and water off her fur when Markus rushed to us with concern and guilt in his eyes. He started feeling for injuries, making Kara ticklish. She rolled onto her belly and panted. Kara, are you okay? Celeste baby, can you hear me? I'm so sorry, we were too caught up in the chase, we didn't realize you had stopped because we were at the river. Kara, do something. He thinks he hurt us. I said, not liking to see Markus in distress. Kara got up and pushed her snout into his arms, practically purring. Markus held her face and looked at us with so much love in his eyes. Kara licked his entire face and he laughed. You're fast. Atlas has never had trouble catching anyone before. You're definitely his new favorite challenge. Kara wagged her tail at the praise from our mate. Come on, we should get back. I was going to take you to a picnic today, but I think since we've had our outdoors fun, I'm taking you on an actual date in town. Kara jumped on his shoulders and licked his face again, making him laugh and cover his face. Kara got up and turned to him, laying down expectantly. Markus' eyebrows shot up. You want me to ride you back to the pack house? Kara nodded and let her tongue fall out of our mouth. Markus seemed to think about it for a minute and then shrugged and climbed on. Kara took us back to the pack house. Jillian was outside waiting for us with clothes. He seemed to find his view amusing. You're looking very Lady Godiva right now, he laughed at Markus as he dismounted from us. He scratched behind our ear and laughed when Kara's leg began to twitch. Kara wanted to keep stretching her legs. I didn't see the harm in it, he said. Jillian gave him a robe for me and turned around. Kara went back to the recesses of my mind and allowed me to push forward. I'm taking the Luna to dinner tonight. Is there anything pressing that needs to be dealt with before we go? Markus asked, helping me into the robe. No, we cleared the day for you to spend with the Luna. Ruby will be moving to the pack house this afternoon. Drive West still wants to see her twice a week as she has a few health issues and the wolfsbane isn't leaving her system as quickly as he hoped. Put her in Maya's old room. Make sure Kelly buys her some proper clothing since Ruby isn't able to leave the pack grounds yet. I put my hand on his arm. What's wrong, Tulai? Maya and I have already prepared her room. We also put a lot of the clothing that we outgrew as we gained weight in the closet for her. It's only lightly used and we can buy her proper clothing for her when she's at her ideal weight. Ruby said she is hoping to become a warrior after all of her health issues clear up, I explained. Well, it seems like the Luna has handled everything for now, Markus said proudly. Indeed, should I have your assistant make a reservation? Yes, that Italian place please. Markus turned to me. Let's go up and nap, he said, taking a leaf out of my hair with a smirk on his face. Celeste POV. I had never been to such a beautiful restaurant. We were about 20 minutes outside of the pack grounds. The restaurant had this old soul feel to it. Something straight out of the romantic books I loved to read. The restaurant was divided into a main level on the left and a raised level on the right. There was low light all throughout, making the dark wood and brick of the walls look intimate and romantic. We were led to the raised level. I could feel several people looking our way as we passed by. I could only imagine it was because Markus was alpha. I was surprised it was empty, with only one table by the open balcony set up for two. Do you like it? Markus asked as he led me to the balcony and wrapped his arms around my waist from behind. It's so beautiful, I said. From the balcony, we could see the start of the forest and the river a little ways out. Markus! I'm so happy to see you. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? I would have joy. A very pretty blonde stopped, finally noticing me. She took in the arms Markus had around my waist and raised an eyebrow. I already didn't like her. She is looking at our man like she wants to eat him, Kara growled in the back of my mind. Marcy! Markus said, and I could tell he was uncomfortable through the bond. I thought you had returned to your father's restaurant in Italy. Oh, I could never stay away from here for too long. Too much history. She batted her lashes seductively. I cleared my throat. Where are my manners? Marcy, this is Celeste, my soon-to-be Luna. Love, this is Marcy, an old friend, he said. Oh Markus, don't make me feel old. I'd like to think I am more than an old friend, she said, deciding to ignore me. Nice to meet you, I said politely, putting a hand possessively over Markus' arms on my waist and extending the other to shake her hand. I'll let the chef know you're here. I take it you want the usual? She asked, ignoring my hand. We'll have 2 tasting menus, if you don't mind. It's Celeste's first time here. Of course. I'll have someone come over with drinks. She walked off with a smile to Markus, still ignoring me. A pretty brunette comes and pours us some wine. I can't take my mind over the familiarity of the Marcy, but I don't want to ask the question. Markus has lived a life before me. I know this, but I'm having trouble reconciling what Marcy insinuated in my head and my heart. Tulai, are you okay? He asked. You're very quiet. I smiled and took a drink of wine. I'm fine. He looked concerned but didn't push. We ate through the sampling menu. It was delicious. I was beginning to enjoy the dessert and my date when I heard her coming up the steps again. Markus, how would your little girlfriend like to see the chef? I'm sure she'd love to talk to someone that can cook, she smirked. Markus frowned slightly, finally catching her tone. Celeste is actually an amazing cook, but love, would you like to talk to the chef? He asked. I was still trying not to be rude, so I said, sure, I can ask him what that last ingredient in the souffle is. I can't figure out if it's anise or fennel, I said, getting up. I expected Markus to come with me, but Marcy held him back. Stay a moment, we need to catch up, she said. Markus looked at me as I was led out by a waitress with a frown on his face. I chatted with the chef a little. He was actually a very pleasant man, but the entire time I felt uncomfortable. I didn't trust Marcy. I made my way back to the dining area and started up the steps. The raised platform came into view as I saw Marcy rubbing herself against Markus and kissing him. I could see the surprise on Markus' face and he stiffened at the touch. Grabbing her hands, he pushed her away. A loud growl escaped from my throat as Kara tried to push forward and claim what was ours, but the pain in seeing them together was greater. I knew Markus had rejected her, but seeing her slathered against him was too much. All the doubts of being worthy came flowing through me, crashing and invading every cell. Seeing that beautiful woman who was graceful, successful, and seductive against Markus, I couldn't help but notice that she was probably more suited for him than me. A lowly slave servant who didn't even know how to use proper silverware 2 months ago. With my heart in pieces, I turned around and ran out of the restaurant. I heard Markus calling my name but I didn't listen. With tears flowing from my eyes, I ran around the corner of the restaurant and shifted, not caring that my beautiful maxi dress was shredded in the process. I let Kara take us away, knowing that neither Markus or Atlas would be able to catch us. Our eyes glowed as the heartache took charge of our direction. I could feel Markus trying to mind link but I refused to open the channel. Where do we go? Kara asked as she kept running away from Markus. That was my only goal at the moment. Getting away from Markus. I flashed Kara an image and she changed direction. We were going home. We ran for over an hour. Our legs were burning but we could no longer feel the tug of Markus' mind link. We ran up the steps of what was once the place we had felt safe. It wasn't until we were in front of my parents' old bedroom that we opened the door, dropped onto the bed and passed out from exhaustion, welcoming nightmares as tears still flowed from my eyes, feeling warmth building inside me. Markus POV. It's been 2 days without Celeste. I hadn't slept. I hadn't eaten. Every time I closed my eyes I flashed to the look of pain in Celeste's eyes as she was coming up the steps. The whole evening was a disaster. I hadn't caught the undertone of Marcy's talk, but apparently Celeste did and so did Kelly as I explained what happened through the dinner. She called me a crazy and stalked off after I finished telling her what happened at the restaurant. She had joined the search for Celeste and would only occasionally mind link me to remind me that I was crazy who hurt her friend. I didn't know what to do. I had been caught off guard by Marcy's kiss. I always knew that she wanted more from me, but I had never been interested. I was friendly because the chef made amazing food. I didn't expect her to make a move on me, especially considering I had brought what I made sure to point out was my mate. When I saw Celeste turn and run, it took me a second to react. I ran after her but by the time I was out of the restaurant, I couldn't see her. I followed her scent and found pieces of her dress around the corner of the restaurant. I shifted and Atlas tried to catch up to her but Kara was fast and we both realized that she was much faster than she'd let on. We lost her scent in the woods. She had looked to be headed to the pack grounds, but when I reached the borders, my guards at the gate said she hadn't been by. I had sent every guard and tracker to search for her and, so far, we hadn't found her. Atlas was angry at me. We hurt our mate and made her leave us. He never liked Marcy and now he was ready to rip her to shreds. Anything. I mind-linked Jillian for the 500th time as I searched the area she'd taken off from to see if we could pick up her any sign of which way she went. Nothing from the trackers yet, Jillian said. It was 11 at night and I knew they were all exhausted. Wherever Celeste was, she didn't want to be found. I would spend another night without her. Call them all back to rest. They can start back up again tomorrow, I told him. Yes, Alpha, he said. I could feel the sadness in his voice. Everyone loved Celeste. Hey man, you coming back? Danny asked. No, I need to keep looking. You haven't eaten or rested in 2 days. I need to find my mate. How are you going to do that if you pass out? I am not going back to an empty room. I need to keep looking. My voice and Atlas mixed together through the mind link, unable to keep the raw emotion from my voice. Danny sighed in my head, at least come back and grab a bag of food. Maya will get something ready for you and for Celeste when you find her. Fine, but have it ready by the time I get there or I'll keep going without it. I'm not wasting my time, I growled and began running towards the pack house. I arrived at the pack gates. They were instantly opened as I passed by. I tried not to notice the looks of pity and sympathy from my guards as I passed by. Alpha. Maya said tentatively as I walked towards her. I hadn't shifted back to human form in 2 days. Atlas nodded for her to continue as he picked up the bag. I noticed that she had put some clothes in the bag. A dress that smelled like Celeste. We inhaled her scent like a drug. Whimpers coming from Atlas. Have you considered she's not in the area? She asked as Danny came and put his arms around her. Atlas turned away from the sight. It hurt too much to see the love they shared, knowing ours was in tatters at the moment. I opened a communication with Danny and Maya. Where would she go? The only place she would know to go is the Blood Moon Pack and she hates that place. What about Sky Moon? Outside of here, it is the last place we were safe. It's where I would go, she said quietly. Atlas snapped his head towards her. Why hadn't we thought of that? It was far, but not far enough that she couldn't get there. Danny, your mate is a genius and I will buy her a new wardrobe if Celeste is there, I said, and Atlas went up on 2 legs, and licked both of their faces. Dude, gross, Danny gagged as Maya laughed. Atlas took the bag of food, water, and clothes and we took off. Hope giving us the energy for the long trek to the Sky Moon Pack grounds. It was almost 1 a.m. as we approached the grounds. We couldn't see or hear anything moving about. It's late, maybe she's here but asleep. Atlas said desperately. I am not sure either of us could handle not finding her here. Let's go inside, I said as we got closer. There's a weird glow coming from the other side of the house. Maybe she has a fire going for heat. We can go through to the back. We walked inside the house. We could see a faint track of paws on the dusty ground. I tried to mind link Celeste. I got no response but there was a connection. She was here. I could smell her faintly and I followed the pull of the mate bond. I went upstairs but I slowed. I could see an orange glow coming from one of the rooms and I also felt heat. I dropped the bag and shifted. The closer I got to the door, the hotter it got. We were sweating but I couldn't stop. I knew she was in there and I was concerned at the amount of heat coming from under the door. If I was sweating, she could be in trouble or hurt. I slowly opened the door and my eyes went wide. In the middle of the room was my mate. And she was floating, covered in fire. Markus POV. What? I whispered as I saw the love of my life levitating from the burnt bed. Her entire body was covered in flames. She was radiating so much heat. The flames licked at the bed below her, yet they didn't spread. She didn't seem to be conscious, yet her eyes were open and her pupils had been replaced by fire. She is our Aztec goddess, Atlas whispered in awe and love in the recesses of my mind. I didn't disagree, but I was concerned for her. The amount of heat coming from her was not normal and I was afraid she might be hurt. Now that I was close, I could sense the drain on her body. Had she been like this for 2 days? I worried. I slowly approached her, afraid of getting burned but willing to do whatever was needed to keep our mate safe. We were made for her. It will not hurt us, Atlas assured me. How do you know this? I asked. Goddess Selene made us for her. To protect her and love her. We wouldn't be able to protect her if her fire hurt us. Okay. I trust you. Here goes. I said as I reached out tentatively through the flames. They licked and danced on our hand but didn't burn. I put my hand on her face, caressing it. Her eyes snapped to us. Mate Kara and Celeste said into my mind. Her body stopped burning and she fell downward. I caught her in my arms. She curled into my arms and inhaled my scent. I held her tight, my face in her hair. Her delicious scent soothing every part of my soul. She was sleeping. Her heartbeat was strong, and her body was back to normal temperature. She was dirty from her run. It was clear to me that she had indeed been in this suspended state of burning since she left us 2 days ago. The kind of power that it took to maintain that kind of burn must have been giant. I sat down on the floor for a long time. Just holding my mate, my goddess. The most important piece of my life. I let my hands roam her body, relishing the feeling of the bond sparks that I had missed so much. Hearing her sweet little moans of contentment coming from her mouth as she slept. Once I was sure she wouldn't disappear from my arms, I got up and walked with her to the bag and picked up the phone Maya had dropped in there. It was hers. It was getting close to 4 in the morning. I dialed Danny. He picked up on the first ring. Alpha, he said tentatively. She's here. Can you send a car to pick us up? I said. I've got the car ready. Maya and I will see you there. Is she all right? He said, relief evident in his voice. I think so. She was floating in a ball of fire. She's asleep now. Ball of fire. Danny said incredulously. Ball of fire. If I hadn't seen it myself, I would not believe it either. My Tulai has got a lot more power than we thought, I said. We'll be there in a flash. Make sure you eat, he said, and hung up. I picked up the shorts and wiggled them on as best as I could with Celeste in my arms. I then dressed Celeste as best as I could, but she wouldn't let go of my neck, so I had to lay her on a couch with her arms wrapped around my neck as I slipped the dress up through her feet. Not that I was complaining, I didn't want her to stop touching me. I went to the steps of the mansion and ate a couple of sandwiches Maya had added to the bag and a couple of protein bars. I drank some water and managed to get her to drink some water, though she didn't wake. An hour later, one of our SUVs approached. I got up with Celeste still sleeping soundly in my arms. Maya, Danny, and Jillian got out of the car, all looking relieved. Maya had a fuzzy blanket that she draped over Celeste and I returned her phone. Feeling the blanket around her made Celeste snuggle further in my arms, putting her head into my chest, making a noise of happiness that had my heart soaring. We need to find out more information about her lineage. There's no way there's no record of the abilities in her line, Danny said as we drove back to the pack house and I described to them how I found her. We have followed her mother's family tree as far as we could, but there was no mention of powers coming from her family. Jillian answered. What if we're looking at this from the wrong angle? I wondered out loud. All three heads looked at me as I caressed my hands through the hair of an unconscious Celeste, trying to brush some of the knots in her hair. We've been trying to follow her lineage, but what if these abilities only follow the women? That's much harder to track and much easier for there to be no mention of abilities. Think about it. How often does a Luna need to exert power in front of outside packs? Jillian's eyes widened with realization, that makes sense actually. Otherwise, these abilities would be common knowledge if males possessed it. We're not known for being bashful of our power. Speaking of power, does anyone have a lighter? I have a theory to test. Danny looked confused but handed me a lighter from the glove compartment. Maya was sitting on his lap since Celeste and I were taking up the entire back seat. I flicked on the flame, took a breath and then put my hand over it, then quickly removed it as I felt the sting of the flame. Ouch, I said, and Celeste whined slightly in her sleep. Alpha. Maya looked concerned for my mental health. Did you forget fire hurts? Her confusion at my actions was so genuine that I had to chuckle. Fire bad? Danny smirked. I was checking to see if I was immune to all fire or just Celeste's. The only way I managed to calm her out of her state of fire was by touching her. Her fire didn't burn me. In fact, it seemed to like me. It was jumping on my skin like it wanted to play, I explained. That kind of makes sense. If she's immune, since you're fully mated, you should be too, Danny said, never heard of though. Kind of bad. I smiled at his words. Celeste was still sleeping when we pulled up to the pack house. Hints of pink and orange were starting to spread across the sky as the sun began to rise. Jillian told me he had let everyone know that we had found Celeste. They all had come out, anxiously waiting to see their Luna before beginning their day. I was moved by their love for our mate. She had become loved by everyone in the short time she'd been with us. The Luna is sleeping, you will have to be quiet. She is fine. I thank you for your concern. I mind-linked them as I gathered Celeste in my arms as I got her out of the car. I saw each and every face light up as they saw her in my arms as I passed by them, and they bared their necks in submission to show their love for their Luna. That's something you don't see every day. Bowing at a Luna who isn't even awake, Jillian mind-linked me, Danny and Maya. The pack loves her. I was proud of my people and my mate. We should have woken her up to see this. She should know we love her as much as she loves us, Danny said. I took a video, Maya giggled. You are so smart baby, Danny said huskily. That's my cue to go to bed. Good night Markus. I'm glad we got our Luna back, Jillian said, and I saw him yawn. Good night brother. Maya, can you please let the cook know we won't be needing breakfast but to leave some snacks outside the door? I'm fairly certain Celeste will be hungry when she wakes up, but I don't think she'll wake up before lunchtime. I could feel her drain, she will sleep a long time. I know I will. Will do. Good night Alpha. She said as she let Danny carry her up the stairs. None of my friends had really slept much while Celeste was gone. I carried Celeste to the elevator and pushed the button for our floor. I sighed as we started going up. I looked down at her in my arms and I felt all of my emotions of the last 2 days come crawling out of the box I put them in while I looked for her. The tears were flowing down my face as I finally made it into the bedroom and I laid her down gently in the bed. I removed my shorts and put on some boxers and crawled in after her, pulling her to my chest. I cried silently as I just held her. I had never been so in love and so scared that I had lost her. A small pessimistic part of me had shown me a life where I wouldn't hold her in my arms again while I looked for her. It was not a life worth living. If I ever lost her. We can't lose mate. We will not survive her loss. Atlas whined in my head. You did not lose us. Celeste needed to heal her heart. Not from you, but from the life she's led. She knows you did not betray us. But she doubts her own worth. We have talked to Selene. There's a storm coming, but as long as we are united, we will okay. We are special. Not just us, but you and Atlas. Our bond goes deeper than most. We have shared so much and we will share more of us soon. The stronger our bond, the more invincible we will be. Celeste has suffered so much, it is hard for her to see just how special she truly is sometimes. You have done so much to heal her heart and mind. Just show her how much you love us and she will do the rest. Kara's voice came through into my mind, soothing our soul and raising so many questions I knew we would get no answer to. The moon goddess Selene does not make mistakes. We were made for them and they for us. We had to trust the bond. We won't let you down, mine and Atlas' voice said back. I know you won't. We were made for each other. We are strong. Kara and Celeste's love flowed brightly into us and for the first time in 2 days, I was able to fall asleep while inhaling the wonderful scent of our mate. Celeste POV. Kara, are you there? I sobbed as I walked through a mist. It had an orange glow to it and I couldn't seem to find my way out of the haze. I had been walking for a while and it was like the mist never ended. Was I dead? Is that why Kara wasn't with me anymore? Suddenly, I feel something soft pressing against my legs. I look down to see Kara purring at my feet. Kara, where are we? I asked her. I must be dead if I can see her in front of me. We're in the nether. We need to heal Celeste. You need to heal. She spoke into my mind. But I'm not injured, I argued. I didn't understand what was happening. Not physically. You have gone through things that would break a normal wolf. But we are not normal. We are special. We need to heal to meet what's coming head on. The actions of that she-wolf broke you. Broke your faith in the bond. It made you doubt that you were worth being mated to Markus. You need to learn details that are important for the battle ahead and restore your faith in yourself. What's coming? I said as I stroked her soft fur. She was such a beautiful wolf. I will let our mother tell you. We must make it to her first. You will see things that will hurt you and things that will not make sense now. I'll be with you the entire way. You don't have to go through anything alone ever again. Are you ready? Ready for what? I don't understand. I was still scared and confused at what was happening. You will follow me, she said as she rubbed herself against me. We start walking through the mist. We finally push past the mist and I gasp. We are at the edge of a cliff. Behind us is nothing but that strange orange mist, but in front of us there's a giant black chasm. The only thing I can see is a path leading upwards. The path is covered in orange marigold petals and seemingly floating. There are several platforms along the way. It leads up to the stars, where I can see the small silhouette of a woman. We take this journey together. No matter what you see, I am here with you, Kara said. My hand shook as I stroked her fur and I nodded. Together I responded as we took our first step onto the path. We walked slowly to the first platform. There was another swirling mist on the platform. I looked down at Kara, who nodded her head at me. Be strong, Celeste. I walked into the mists, hanging onto Kara's fur like my life depended on it. The mist enclosed us within it, transforming into a scene. I immediately knew where I was and started shaking. I was right on the platform. Alpha Jeff was standing on one side, my father on the other. They began fighting. The whole fight was as if at fast-forward speed. It was clear my father was strong, easily overpowering Alpha Jeff, and I wondered how he'd lost. Suddenly, the entire fight stopped and moved as if in slow motion. I saw the needle coming out of the wrist of Alpha Jeff's coat. No, not a needle, a syringe. I saw how my father blocked a punch, and Alpha Jeff took the contact to stab my father with the syringe, a purple liquid pulsating into my father's arm. Even if I hadn't seen it myself, I knew what happened next. My father fell to his knees and Alpha Jeff slit his throat and then rips the head from my father's body. I trembled with anger and grief. I saw my mother rush forward and fall on his corpse. I didn't want to look at what happened next. I had dreamt it many times. It was my own personal nightmare. I buried my head in Kara's fur and cried. This is where your path began. This is the moment we thought defined our life, but you hadn't seen it all. You didn't know the truth. I'm sorry, Celeste, for making you relive this, but now you know the truth. Let it fuel you. He killed him. He cheated. He didn't just challenge my father for my mother, he came ready to murder him. I cried. Yes, your father was strong. Stronger still with your mother at his side. Alpha Jeff did not win the challenge. He betrayed the natural order of nature and the laws of werewolf kind, Kara growled. Then a little gentler, she said, when you are ready, we must keep going. I weep a little longer for all those lost that night. Finally, I stand and nod at Kara. She brushes herself against my side and leads me out of the mist and back onto the path upwards. Why do I need to know that my father was murdered? Why does that matter now? It can't be changed. I asked Kara. It matters, because his murderer has not received his punishment. So many of our people were murdered that night. Am I supposed to avenge my father, our people? I was confused. I did not see why Moon Goddess Selene would want to put me on a path of revenge. Kara shook her head. This will matter when future events come to pass. I cannot say more, but you will know why this was important to know soon. Everything you will see here has a purpose. Even if we don't always understand it right away. I trust you and our goddess, I say as we arrive at the next platform. I grab hold of her fur as she leads me through the mist. This time, I don't recognize where we are. This isn't something I lived. I recognize the river as the one that runs through Sky Moon and Crescent Moon, but this part isn't part of either territory. I am floating on top of the river. I am not sure what's going on until I see it. I see him. Lucian Pierce, my father's gamma and the man who saved me. He was floating down the river face up. His face was bruised and tinted blue. He flowed down the river until he hit a rock. His body twisted and hit the bank of the river, a foot stuck on a branch, stopping him from pushing further down. Time seemed to speed up again, noted by the faster current and unnatural movement of his body in the river. The night was giving way to day when time slowed down to normal again. I heard a howl, followed by the pattering of paws, and then saw 3 wolves come to where Lucian was laying. 2 of them transformed and pulled him out. They fastened him to the 3rd wolf and all 3 of them ran off again. I felt myself being pulled forward. I stopped in a hospital room. Lucian was hooked up to several machines. His face was no longer bruised, so it must have been a different day. There was a man talking to one of the doctors. I don't know if he'll ever wake up, Alpha. There's nothing physically wrong with his body, but his brain was severely bruised when we found him. I don't know the extent of his brain damage. He's stable but in a coma. Has anyone figured out who he is yet? Beta Derek has been looking but hasn't found anything. There was nothing on him to identify him. Well, let's give him a week. If he's not awake by then, we'll move him to the pack house. We can have a nerdad. Mom sent me to volunteer at the children's ward. She wanted to know if you were going to be home for dinner. She said text her, because she's heading to the city on some errands. I squinted at the boy. He looked to be about 12 or 13 here, something about him looked familiar. Thanks, Rhett. Did you bring anything for the little ones? My eyes widened. Alpha Rhett. Lucian has been at Alpha Rhett's pack this whole time. Yeah, Mom and I made lemon squares, he grinned. The mist swallowed the scene around me. I felt Kara push her snout into my leg, guiding me out of the platform. Why did he never look for me? I asked her. He said he would come back for me. He is still in a coma. He's been stuck in darkness for almost 12 years. He needs you to help guide him out of that darkness so he can return to our mother and be reborn. Karam mourned along with me. Come, we must keep going. The longer we are here, the longer our mate is without us. I can sense their distress. Celeste POV. We walked towards the next platform. The mist swirled around us, revealing another scene. We were at Alpha Jeff's office. The table was flipped over. A younger Alpha Jeff was angry. He was red in the face. Beta Trevor was against a wall, looking scared. Everything we did for nothing. She killed herself and her daughter is now here to be found. How did you do this up? You had one job, Trevor. Find her while I took care of Alpha Corey and took her mom as my Luna. Alpha, we looked for her everywhere. She is either dead or they snuck her out before the fight began. We couldn't even find pictures. We found the betas destroying the phones and pictures in the pack house. There was nothing to tell us what the child looked like. None of the children we have in the dungeon match the age. We have the council breathing down our necks and nothing to show for it. If they find all these pups and she-wolves, Gamma Gabriel has everyone down in the old dungeons in the forest. No one knows about them. We can keep all them there until the investigation is over. Then we can see if any warriors find a mate. We can kill the rest. The pups can work the pack house until they get their wolves. Some of the warriors are having trouble controlling their wolves. They need mates. Beta Trevor said and my eyes widened, knowing this whole thing was his idea. If they find them, I will personally end your life in the most painful way I can think of before the council can even get their hands on me. Get out of my office and have someone fix this. Have Louisa come to my bedroom. She will be good for something after all, he growled. Alpha, if I may. I think it would be good for the warriors to see you with a Luna. She already has your pup. Perhaps. Beta Trevor's voice trailed off as he saw how angry his Alpha was. Do not tell me who to choose as a Luna. Alpha Jeff held Beta Trevor by the throat against the wall. He let Beta Trevor drop to the ground. Before he exited he said, I'll mark her after the investigation. I'm supposed to have wanted the Luna of that pack for mine anyway. He left and after a few minutes Luna Louisa walked into the room. Beta Trevor was still massaging his throat. So. He'll mark you after the investigation is over, he said, looking at her with lust in his eyes. Perfect, that gives us a few weeks together, she purred. Why do you need to be Luna? Why aren't I enough? He whined as he tried to grab her. Our child will have an alpha father. I will be Luna, she held him back, don't. He called for me. I am not risking him sending you on me. I will be Luna. But you said you would be my mate. I deserve better. I will never again let anyone look down on me. Since we won't be getting our price from Helios for that Luna and pup, this is the next best thing. She said. I'll tell Alpha Jeff that Sandra is mine, he challenged. You don't have the balls, she hissed. You think he would spare you, or Sandra? Don't you want your child to grow up to be Luna someday? She could do that with me. You're pathetic. You can't even leave the pack without Jeff's permission. With me as Luna, I will change this pack for the better. Only I can control that beast. You and I will rule, and one day, we will kill him and take over the pack. Trust me, my love. She cooed when I find a way to take over every aspect of this pack. I'll visit you tonight. We have a few more weeks before he marks me. She said as she left the room, leaving a dejected Beta Trevor looking after her. The mist swirled back over us. Kara, why do I need to know that Sandra is not Alpha Jeff's child? I asked. I am not sure. I think some stuff will be easier to understand later. We walked towards the next platform. The mist swirled around me and I waited as a new scene spread out around me. We were once again inside Alpha Jeff's office. Sandra was fuming and crying on the couch while Alpha Jeff was arguing with Luna Luisa. How does that she have a wolf? Isn't she 17? How can you not know she has a wolf? It's not like I saw her be born, Luna Luisa growled. What are we going to do now? They are going to find out that we kept the she-wolves from the pack and that we kill them so we don't have to feed them, he growled. Don't worry. Even if she talks, who's going to believe in Omega? She has no proof. I want her dead. She stole my day. I was supposed to find my mate. Not her. That Alpha is supposed to be my mate. Sandra shouted, shut your trap, useless pup. I already have to figure out a way for Alpha Markus not to demand punishment from you. Couldn't you control your mouth for 2 days? You know the kind of mess you got yourself into? You beat someone in front of all the alphas and none will protect you because you couldn't grab one as a mate. He growled at her and she shrank into the couch. That mud is coming. Make sure you stay away from the hospital wing, he said. Sandra stomped out of the room as Markus came in. You wished to see us? Alpha Jeff, Markus, and Jillian came in. Hostility rolling off both of them in waves. Yes, come in, come in. I would like to apologize on behalf of my daughter. She was not under the right state of mind. She had her heart set on finding her mate and was extremely disappointed. Had she known Celeste was your mate, I assure you, she would not have acted the way she did. You know how young girls are, he chuckled. The problem here is that your daughter beat 2 innocent women that have done nothing but work hard for your pack all weekend. They are also underage. That is fairly illegal, Markus said, and I saw a vein at his temple pop. I could tell he was trying not to lose his cool. I could see his internal fight with Atlas to remain in control. Come now, Markus. You know how it is with ranked wolves, we get a little overzealous with the help when we're upset. We don't need to involve the council over a temper tantrum. He tried to wave it off. I could see Mark's fists at his sides, but Alpha Jeff seemed not to notice. Markus sighed. I will not call the council to report the attack, however, I need some assurances. Name them. Alpha Jeff growled. Your daughter is not to get near my mate or Maya. She is not allowed on my pack lands unless she is invited or in an official capacity. She will address my mate as is deserving of her role as my future Luna. If you can guarantee me this, I will leave here in good terms, and not an enemy. Done. I will make sure she never touches your mate again, he said. Just then, I heard Sandra shrieking and everyone bolted out of the office. The mist swirled around us. Why would Markus not press charges? She almost killed me. I asked Kara. He needs them to lower their guard. He cannot afford Alpha Jeff to go on the offensive. I think he was also afraid for the other girls, considering they are already disappearing. Why did I need to know this? Because you need to learn to choose your battles. It is important to know when to let something go in order to keep the peace or for a greater purpose, she said as we walked out of the mist. We walked towards the next platform. There were only 2 left before reaching the top. I could see the back of the woman sitting on a bench. Her hair was as black as the night and pooled on the floor. Her dress was white and shined like the stars against chocolate skin. I could not see her face. Celeste POV. The mists swirled around us. We were back at my parents' pack grounds. We were having a picnic by the banks of the river. I saw 6-year-old me chasing a butterfly, my parents talking happily from blankets on the ground feeding each other food from a picnic basket. The scene was in fast forward but my heart was overflowing with love for them. Being able to remember them happily. I only have a couple of memories of them after so many years. So many lost memories. Suddenly, I saw a 6-year-old me got too close to the edge of the bank and started falling in, but then she didn't. She floated upwards on the top of a small wind tornado. My father grabbed me from the top and carried me back to my mother who was running towards us with her hand upraised. I cried into his chest, scared. "You have to be more careful," Mom said tenderly before I saw my dad lift his head and sniff. They both turned to the other side of the river and I saw the back of a man running into the woods with inhuman speed. "Corey," Mom whispered and I could see worry in her face. My father shifted and ran after him. 5 minutes later, my father runs back. I see my mother sigh in relief until my father shifted. I couldn't catch him. It had too big a head start. "Do you think it's him?" my mother asked. Fear evident in her brown eyes. "I don't know. We have never seen his face. How could he find us? Do you think he saw?" she asked, referring to her wind tornado. "I don't think so, but we should be more careful. Little Celeste, we should not run by the end of the river," he said. I giggled as he tickled me and then my eyes went white. When my eyes went back to their normal color, I was smiling. "What did you see, baby?" my mother asked. "Mommy, I saw a boy. He had the prettiest gray eyes and he called me his little Tulai and then he made a kissy face." 6-year-old me made a face that made my parents laugh. "What does Tulai mean, Mommy?" "I don't know, my love, but we'll look it up when we get home, okay?" My eyes went wide at the exchange. I couldn't remember any of this but I knew who I must have seen in my vision at 6 years old. "You saw your future with Markus many times when you were younger. You just don't remember. You were destined to meet. Everything that happens, happens for a reason. It will be important for you to remember this." "Kara, why? Why are you showing me all of this? What does it mean?" "Some things are destined to come to pass. You need to understand because you can't blame yourself for anything that happens in the coming months or what you will learn happened in the past. It is not your fault, it is destined. What's going to happen? I don't have that knowledge. I only know what our mother tells me," she said sadly. We walk out of the mists more frustrated than when this whole thing started. I was being shown so many things and I was to believe that it was for a purpose and would make sense, but without an explanation. I only hoped when we got to the top, it would all make sense. We reached the last platform and I hesitated. This one was different. The mist was golden instead of orange and I could hear things happening inside already. I looked down at Kara and she also looked a bit worried as we stepped in. We were instantly in the middle of a war unlike anything I had ever seen. We're in a big ancient plaza. A strange pyramid in front of us and another one some way away. But these pyramids were not like the ones from Egypt you could see in movies. They looked older, more ancient and primal. The pyramids seemed to have several levels tapering up to a small platform. Big stairs going up the middle all the way to the top. The area was surrounded by similar style platforms, as if they had begun building smaller pyramids but had stopped at the first level. The entire ground was littered with bodies, blood, and weapons. There are wolves fighting against humans everywhere. The growls, howls and screams were all around us. I put my hands to my ears, not wanting to hear so many agonizing sounds. My heart was breaking as I took in the fighting, seeing how many souls were lost. The warrior's skin was a deep copper. Muscles rippled through their bodies. Each was dressed for battle in leather and feathers. Their chests were bare and painted, their waists adorned with loins. Their heads were adorned with animal headdresses, eagles, jaguars, wolves. They looked like they belonged to an ancient period, their weapons made of wood and stone. They were as beautiful as the wolves they were fighting. I felt a pull and was transported to the top of one of the pyramids. I could see a woman on the ground, a dark beauty to her. Her face was ethereal, though at the moment she was smirking at the two people fighting each other. I gave me a shiver. Something seemed off about her. There seemed to be a dark shadow behind her. I turned to look at the two people fighting. It was a man and a woman. They were both beautiful and there was a resemblance between them. The woman had raven black hair flowing behind her down to her waist. Her flawless dark skin is adorned with paint in hues of blue and yellow. She was wearing a giant feathered headdress framing her head. She was wearing a matching chest covering made of cloth and gold beading, her loin cloth in the same style, the skirting dropping below her knees. She was holding a spear, a curved crystal knife held at her waist. Her movements were defensive. I could see no attempt to attack the man. The man was beautiful. He looked like he had been kissed by the sun. His body was dark and full of muscle adorned with the same paint as the woman. He was wearing a smaller but more vicious-looking headdress with blue feathers adorning the skull of an eagle. He had on a leather shoulder piece that looked similar to a cape and matching loin cloth. He was holding a big flat bat-looking weapon with sharp flat stones attached to either side of the wood. He was attacking the woman. "Brother, I am not your enemy," she cried as she deflected another attack. "She's lying. You saw her trying to kill me, son," the woman on the floor attacked. She smirked at the woman from behind her son's back when the man charged. The weapon he was holding slashed her side. They continued fighting for what seemed like an eternity. I could see the sun and moon rise and set for what looked to be years. Suddenly, she was near the edge of the top. She looked down at the fighting, a sob catching in her throat as she saw the destruction. She turned to face the man, her eyes glowing white with tears flowing down her face. She threw her lance. The man tried to deflect, but it was not aimed at him. I see it fly past him and with a sickening thud, slam into the heart of the woman on the ground. The man turned and ran to her, roaring in anger. He held her in her arms and sobbed. He turned to look back at the woman, his eyes black as night. The woman sobbed and dropped to the ground. "I'm sorry, mother. I'm sorry, brother. There was no other way." She looked again at the fighting below. "They will not be lost. I will bring them together and one day, you will see the truth. Until then, I will protect my people and yours." The man stood and began to charge, but she grabbed the crystal knife from her belt and plunged it into her heart. A blinding light burst forth from it and I had to shield my eyes from it. The mists swirled and this time they disappeared. I was standing on the platform. Kara whined and pushed into my leg. "What was that?" I asked her. "That was my end and the beginning of the werewolf race." I snapped my head towards the top of the path. The woman whose back to me was now looking down and I couldn't help but gasp. Her clothing was different, her hair longer and she was no longer adorned in paint, but there was no mistaking it, this was the woman in the vision. I knew then that she was the moon goddess. "Come children. I won't bite," she said with a smile. Kara left my side and bounded up towards her like a pup, jumping on her with her front paws to lick her face. The moon goddess laughed and buried her face in Kara's fur. I watched enthralled with her ethereal laughter as I walked towards her. I arrived at the top to see Kara on her back twitching her leg as the moon goddess rubbed her belly while sitting on the ground, somehow looking graceful on the floor. She got up at me smiling, "So you found me. I have been waiting for you for a very long time, Celeste," she said as she pulled me into a hug. Celeste POV. There's no describing the feeling of being hugged by the moon goddess. It was like every crevice of my soul was lit up with love and light. All the pain, physical and emotional, seemed to disappear. The exhaustion, the feeling of failure, of not doing enough and not being enough, while in her arms, all went away. All I felt was peace in my soul and love in my heart. As much as I loved my parents, I knew, this was all of our mother. She pulled away and I wanted to pout. She grabbed my hand and took me to sit on the bench. "I have so much to tell you both," she said as Kara came and laid at her feet. "We don't have a lot of time. Markus and Atlas are going out of their minds without you. You've been gone too long for their liking," she giggled, "you have them wrapped around your fingers, you know? They fell for you from the moment they tasted your food." I blushed, "I love them too." She smiled at me. "I know you both do. Not to toot my own horn, but it is one of my better matches, so toot toot." I laughed and the smile slipped off her face slightly. "I wish your life wasn't so hard. I wish I had been able to stop all the pain you have gone through, my child." A tear slipped from her eyes. "It all started when my mother, Kotlakyu, Kohatlikwai, became pregnant with my brother Huitzilopochtli, Huitzilopochtli, the Aztec god of war and the sun. We all go by many names. I am Selene, but back then, I was known as Koyalzarki, Koyalshauki, the Aztec goddess of the moon. When my mother became pregnant, me and my brothers built Huitzilopochtli's temple across from mine. We were excited to meet him. However, as my mother's pregnancy progressed, we became concerned with her actions. We realized too late that Tezcatlipoca, Tezcatlipoca, the god of darkness, had been influencing my mother and our unborn brother, hoping to sway him to the dark side and take control of all the creatures on Earth. We mounted an assault, hoping to capture my mother and remove the influence of Tezcatlipoca before my brother was born. Unfortunately, we were too late. As we attempted to take her, Huitzilopochtli was born and my mother told him that I was trying to kill him and her. Kara meowed and rubbed herself against Selene's legs, sharing her pain. I was holding her hands and gave them a supportive squeeze. She paused for a moment, silently crying and looking away, as if lost in the memory. We fought for 100 years, stuck in a perpetual fight. At one point, I realized the amount of loss my people, my brothers, and our wolves were suffering. She looked back at me and her eyes were glowing. I made the decision then. I gave up my physical life. I fed as many as I could with my life force, but I knew it wouldn't be enough, so I got creative. She laughed a little at this. I merged the life force of my wolves with my brothers and warriors, 25,000 female werewolves and 25,000 males. Among them, my 400 brothers and sisters. She looked at me with sorrow in her eyes. I knew there was no saving my mother. I had to kill her, lest the world be plunged into chaos and death. My brother, believing us to be evil, swore to kill all of my brothers and sisters, vowing to make me regret my sacrifice. I scattered them all across the globe, erased their memories and renamed them, in the hopes of saving them from his wrath. I have watched for a millennia as he hunts down the descendants of my brothers and sisters. There's only a handful of them left. Each of my brothers and sisters has been systematically eradicated from the earth. Their deaths are slow and horrendous. Each done under a full moon so that I may watch. I gasp as tears come down my face, unable to imagine seeing 400 of your siblings die at the hands of your brother, unable to do anything. You, Celeste, are among one of the handful of descendants of my sister Chantico, the goddess of fire. Kara was the wolf that originally merged with her. She is only reborn every 100 YRS to one of my sister's descendants. You were blessed from birth, as has every woman in her line, but being paired with Kara activated more powers than even I knew. You have always had the power of sight. She has awakened the power of fire in you. When I sent Kara back down to you, I also imbued her with some of my power. In rare occasions, you can both work together to heal, but it only activates when it is meant to. When someone is between life and death, that should not have been. Like Maya. She was too malnourished to shift on her own. I nodded in understanding. Yes, Maya, yourself and all of the females in your pack should have had a normal life. What happened to you, was catalyzed by my brother attempting to destroy your line. I cannot give you more information on him as it is forbidden. It is a journey you must discover for yourself. I was only able to give you snippets of the past for you to decode on your own and to provide you with some tools for your journey. I know you can bring an end to this suffering, my child. I trust you to make the right decision when the time comes, she said. She looked off into the ether, then smiled. Markus and Atlas have almost found you. There's just a few more things I can do for you both. I have given Markus and Atlas the ability to share your many blessings. He should be able to tap into them as he is the other half of your soul. He will slowly figure out how to do this, but you must both remember that the more power you display to the world, the more you will attract those hungry for it. Use them wisely, my daughter. My next gift is one you've complained about for many years. She laughed as I scrunched my nose and moved my head, confused. Your sight did break when your mother passed. I will fix it. No more migraines, she smiled. Now you will sleep, as this trip has taken a lot of energy. Kara, you will have to explain to Markus while Celeste regains her strength. A storm is coming, he needs to trust in the bond so he can unlock her gifts. The stronger your bond gets, the stronger you will all be. I love you, my daughters, she said as she leaned forward and kissed my forehead. Once more, I felt her light fill my soul and my body, healing the scars of my past. Suddenly, I heard Markus' voice far away. Find your allies, my daughter. Those who are closest to you and Markus, I will make sure they find their mates soon. It will make them all stronger for the fight ahead. Go to where this all began. And do me a favor. Have Jillian practice his Spanish. Don't tell him why, but it will make his mate very happy. She laughed as my body felt the sparks of the bond and Kara and I suddenly fell from the platform as she continued to speak. We screamed as we looked down, only to see Markus and Atlas on the platform below. Mate, we both said, and suddenly I felt myself in his arms, the sparks of the bond lulling me into a calm and dreamless sleep. Markus POV. Celeste has been sleeping for almost 16 HRS. Breakfast came and went, as did lunch. I was starting to get worried when I finally felt her stir in my arms. I had spent the morning in our office, trying to catch up on some of the pile of work that had been building up while I searched for her, but I could not stop myself from checking on her every 10 minutes, making sure she was still there. I left the door between the two rooms open so I could hear her heartbeat steady and her breathing deep. Barking at anyone that came in and tried to make noise. Finally, at 2, I had given up on work and crawled into bed with her. Holding her as lightly as I could without waking her, but close enough to make sure she couldn't get up without me. Her breathing changed. She snuggled further into my chest and then her beautiful eyes finally opened. Her sleepy smile broke every bit of will in me to let her choose to allow me near her, and I started kissing her with all of the emotions I had felt in the last 3 days. We stayed like that for a few minutes as we caught our breath and I also found my release. I love you, she said into my neck. I gripped her hips and wrapped my arms around her. I was scared that you would never come back to me, I admitted. She lifted her head and searched my eyes. I felt her guilt crash into me and tears drop from her eyes. I kissed the tears away. I'm sorry, Markus. When I saw her kissing you, all I could think about was how much better she looked at your side. How much you deserved someone that was beautiful, poised, educated. Someone that had no baggage as your Luna. It hurt so much to feel like maybe you would be better off with someone like her, she said as she tried to remove herself from on top of me, but I gripped her tight to me, flipping us over in the bed instead, so that I was on top of her. Are you crazy? From the moment I met you, all I've been able to think is how lucky I could have been to be paired with someone as strong and amazing as you. Have you any idea what you have overcome? How strong and amazing you are! I was almost yelling at her and when her eyes went wide I just crushed my lips to hers, letting my love and admiration for her flow through the bond. If anyone got screwed in the mate department it was you. I'm nothing but your average alpha. You are my Aztec goddess. She squinted her eyes at that. How did you know that? Know what? I said, full of confusion. That I come from an Aztec bloodline. I didn't. It's something that Atlas keeps telling me you are, I said, feeling the smugness from Atlas in my mind. Are you? I asked. She nodded. I went on this trip. Vision? I don't know how to describe it. I had a visit with Selene. There's a lot I have to tell you, she said and sat up, caressing my hair in her lap. I listened to everything she saw while she was suspended in fire, which she didn't know she had done. My eyes went wide as she told me of the visions on each of the platforms. At first, I would have argued that it was likely just a dream, but she had information she should not know about. My eyes went even wider as she told me about us and sharing powers, while trying to ignore Atlas I told you so dance while prancing in my head. After she was done, I was sitting up on the bed in front of her, mulling over everything she had just told me when suddenly, I remembered something Red had told me long ago. I suddenly got up and ran to the office and grabbed my cell phone. I was dialing by the time I jumped back onto the bed, making her give a tiny yelp. I put the phone on speakerphone. Markus, I was about to head for dinner. How can I help you? My apologies, Red. I was wondering if I could ask you a question about something you had mentioned to me a long time ago about a member of your pack. I have Celeste on speakerphone. Sure. He said hesitantly. You once told me you had a hospice pack member in your pack house that had been there since your dad was Alpha, I said, and Celeste's eyes finally went wide as she realized what I was doing. Is he still alive, and can you tell me a little more about him? Why are you asking? He said. Please, I will explain in a little bit. Can you tell me about him? He isn't really a pack member. My father's beta found him near death in the river as they felt someone come into the pack grounds without permission. He has been in a coma for the last 12 years or so. We could never find out who he is or where he came from. Uncle Lucian, Celeste Whisper yelled, grabbing my arm. Is he still in your care? Yes, but he has never woken up in the last 12 years. Who is Uncle Lucian? He asked. I nodded to Celeste to answer. My father's Gamma. The one that saved my life the night my parents died. He jumped in the river to try to find help, but I never saw him resurface. You think that's who is here? Yes, she said and nodded at the phone as if Red could see him. Are we able to come see if it's him this week? I asked. Of course, but even if he is, he hasn't come to. He is stable, asleep, so we have never been able to bring ourselves to let him die, but no one has much hope of him ever waking up. We just do what we can and feed him through and for. I wouldn't be a good friend if I didn't warn you not to get your hopes up. We understand. I would just like to be able to thank him for saving my life, Celeste said. Let me know when works for you. Thank you, my friend. We will be in touch. I'll bake you cookies. Celeste squealed at the phone. I heard Red chuckle before hanging up. As soon as the phone clicked off, Celeste jumped in my arms. Thank you, she said. I held her in my arms for a moment before I heard her stomach rumble. I chuckled. Celeste is awake. We'll be down for dinner, I let Maya, Danny, and Jillian know. Come Tulai, let's shower and get some food in you, I said, and she jumped off the bed and ran to the bathroom door, stopping at the entrance and looking back at me with a sultry look. You coming? She asked, and I moved off the bed to follow. Celeste POV. It felt good talking to Markus. telling him everything that happened and that I didn't blame him for what I saw at the restaurant. He never judged me or doubted me. He just listened and understood. As we made love in the shower, I sent up a prayer of thanks to Selene for deeming me worthy of such a mate. For once in my life, I felt like my heart was full. But I was wrong, and when I walked down with Markus for dinner, I realized just how wrong I was. As we got closer to the first floor, I heard people and a commotion. I looked up at Markus. "What's going on?" I asked as we paused on the third floor. "I'm not sure. I will ask," he said, and his eyes glazed over as he engaged in mind-link conversation. I saw his face slowly transform into one of joy. He looked down at me with such love and adoration that it took my breath away. "It appears there's been a change of plans and we need to wait a minute before we go down," he said, pushing me to the wall and crushing his lips to mine, not allowing me to ask what was happening. By the time he let me back up for air, I was flushed, breathless and more than a little disoriented. "What were we doing?" "You were going to dinner," Kara smirked in my head. I looked up at Markus, who was trying to get his breathing under control. He dipped his head and gave me a slow sensual kiss. "Okay, they are ready now," he said, "although I'm tempted to just take you back up and lock us in the room for the next couple of weeks," he laughed. "What's ready?" I asked. "Come, you'll see." We started back down the steps. Everything was quiet now. I started going towards the dining room when Markus pulled me towards the backyard. "Aren't we going to dinner?" I asked. He smiled. "We are, but the pack heard that you were home and awake and they wanted to see you. Wanted to make sure you were okay. They were hounding Daniel and Jillian all day and Maya had the idea of having dinner with the pack. They set up catering in the backyard," he said as he opened the back door, and I gasped. Lined up from the door to the clearing were pack members. I was frozen in place with emotion as some of the children from the staff ran up to me, wrapping their little arms around my legs. Luna, you're back!" they chirped. I bent down and hugged them both, tears in my eyes. I picked Matthew up, one of the cook's grandchildren, and relished his little hands wrapping around my neck, and the kiss he gave my cheek melted my heart. Markus wrapped his arm around my waist and started leading me through the pack towards the dining tables. Everyone either bared their necks in reverence, welcomed me back, or bowed as they called me Luna. The tears were starting to flow from my eyes at the love they all showed for me when we got to the platform where Markus had announced our arrival. I stopped and realized that the dining room tables were packed. "Is everyone here?" I sobbed to Markus. "Yes, they all love their Luna," Markus said. I looked up at him and his eyes were also brimming with tears of affection for me and his pack. My eyes began to glow. "Kara, help me please. Come forward with me," I said. "Right here with you always," she responded, as moved with the showing of love as I was. I stepped forward. I felt my eyes go black and my body began to glow. I felt the same love I felt when Selene had kissed me. There were gasps from the pack members as they saw how I looked. "Luna, you're glowing!" Matthew exclaimed with awe. I turned and kissed his cheek. My kiss left a glowing mark before the glow was absorbed into his skin. "I know, little one. I'm just happy," Kara and I said together. I let him down and he ran to his grandmother, Gammy. Luna kissed me. Did you see? I left Markus' hand on the small of my back, guiding me forward with love in his eyes. I turned to the pack. Our pack. Ours to protect. Ours to love. Ours to help thrive. My voice mixed with Kara's as we spoke to our family, our power flowing through our voice. My aura flowing over the entire space. I don't know what I did to deserve all the love you have shown me. I am forever grateful that you have accepted me and cared for me. I love you all more than you can imagine. You have made my heart whole. You are my family, the one I craved for 12 years. I will protect and love you with everything I have. I will fight with you and for you. Markus gathered me in his arms now and bent down to kiss me. I heard some gasps, and when I opened my eyes, I saw that he too was glowing now. The moon goddess said you would share my gifts, I whispered as I touched his surprised face. His eyes turned black and he turned to speak to our people. We are both thankful of the love, support, and loyalty of our pack. No other Alpha or Luna could be luckier than us. Now let's eat and be merry. Our Luna is home. His and Atlas voices were mixed together. His voice full of power and affection. The entire pack cheered and clapped. You are truly special. How could I have been so blessed by the moon goddess, he said as he put his forehead to mine. I was thinking the same thing, I giggled. He brushed his lips on mine and then my stomach grumbled. He laughed. Come, let's get some food in you. Everything else can wait until tomorrow. I nodded and took his hand as he led me down to the table with Danny, Maya, Jillian, Alexander, and Marie. Markus POV. Are you ready for this Tulai? I asked as we pulled up to Red's pack house a few days later. I am. I know the chances that it's him are low and that he'll come to are even lower, but I need to try. I owe him that, she said, gripping the Tupperware despite her assurances. We had talked about what she was going to do when she saw her father's gamma. I still didn't like what she was wanting to try. After a lot of conversations, I had to admit that it was her right to try. I trusted Red to keep her secret, but I was more concerned over the risk to her mental health as well as the physical toll it had on her body before. I got out of the car and helped her out. Markus. Luna Celeste. Welcome to Blue Moon Pack. Red walked down the steps towards us. His smile widened when he noticed the Tupperware in Celeste's hands. That man has a soft spot for sweets. Call me Celeste please. I brought you some baking, she said shyly, holding out the Tupperware. Only if you call me Red, he insisted, then stopped. I think we've had this line of conversation before, he laughed, unable to stop himself from taking one of the brownies in the Tupperware and practically inhaling it. Ah, this is better than ambrosia, he moaned, almost making me growl possessively. Celeste put her hand on my chest and giggled. Red smirked at my reaction before frowning a little. He looked at Celeste. Are you sure you want to see him? He's been in bed for 12 years. That does something to a body. He will not look as you remember him. Celeste's eyes rimmed with unshed tears, but she nodded at him. He sighed, follow me. He turned around and went up the steps and through the foyer. He stopped in the kitchen, then seemed to change his mind. He grabbed the attention of a small child. Can you take these to my office? You can have one treat from it after you place it on my desk, he said, and the little girl nodded in excitement. He then led us to the first floor bedrooms on the left wing of the house. We have him next to staff quarters in case there's any kind of emergency. They look after him through the night. We have a nurse come out once a day to provide medical care, and the staff has been taught how to exercise his muscles and rotate his position to avoid bed sores. I'm not going to mince words, Celeste. We have done our best, but it's been 12 years. There was nothing we could do to stop the eventual atrophy of his body. He stopped at a door at the end of the hall. Celeste gripped my hand as I nodded at Rhett. He opened the door and walked inside. I put my arm around her shoulder and gave it a squeeze. We came into a room with a single bed in the middle. There were a couple of monitors next to it and a dresser with medical supplies. The man in the bed was something my mind would never forget. Despite being under a bed sheet, I could see the outline of every bone in his body. There was hardly any muscle left in his limbs. His cheeks were gaunt, we could see the outline of his orbital bones, and his hair was long. "Uncle Lucian," I heard Celeste whisper. She didn't let go of my hand, instead we walked slowly towards the man in the bed together. Tears were flowing freely down her face. I could hear Atlas howling at the pain we could feel coming from our mate. She finally let me go a few steps from the bed and walked the final steps to the bed. She bent down and hugged the torso of the unresponsive man, a sob leaving her mouth. Looking closer, you could see how well taken care of he actually was. He had an /4 on his arm, his face was shaved, his hair was clean and free of knots. There were 2 electrodes attached to the sides of his forehead. My heart was breaking for Celeste. "I will let you have some time with him," Rhett said uncomfortably from the other side of the room. He started to move towards the door when Celeste got up. She ran and hugged Rhett. I thought I or Atlas' possessive instinct would surface, but they didn't. Atlas and I both knew that this was not the time. There was too much grief hitting us from Celeste through the bond. "Thank you for caring for him. It is a debt I will never be able to pay back," she said. Rhett looked to me, waiting for permission. I nodded at him, allowing him to return her hug. "There is nothing owed. I wish we could have done more for him. My dad tried his best, but the doctors that looked at him said the swelling to his brain had been too much." Celeste let him go and went back to stand at the side of the bed. She started to caress his hair, talking to him so low that even my werewolf hearing couldn't catch it. She brushed his hair with her hands while talking to him. Red and I moved to the side of the room, allowing her some privacy. Atlas started pacing in the back of my head. "Something is happening." Kara said, "Be ready," he said. I took a step closer to Celeste as I started noticing her begin to glow. "Markus?" Red asked, taking a step back. Unsure if this was a good thing or a bad thing. "It's okay. I'll explain after," I said as I stood behind Celeste, already feeling the drain on her body. Celeste lowered herself to kiss his forehead. Her glowing kiss remained on Lucian's forehead before it expanded and covered his entire forehead, finally absorbing into his head. One of the monitors started beeping, and he opened his eyes. "Uncle Lucian," Celeste said, her eyes still glowing, her hand caressing his hair. The man looked up at her. "Celeste?" he said. "Yes. We don't have much time. This is a small gift from our goddess. I cannot heal you. It was not meant to be. This is only a reprieve. I don't understand, he said. I survived Uncle Lucian. I am alive because of you. You saved my life. I escaped Alpha Jeff and I found my mate. I am happy. All because of you. A tear fell down from his eyes. I am glad, little one. I have spent so much time trying to find you in the darkness, but I couldn't find a way out. I know, but you don't have to look anymore. You don't have to go back to the darkness. You can go back to our mother, to live your next life. I love you, Uncle Lucian. I have never forgotten your sacrifice. It kept me going when I thought I had nothing to fight for. In the house, Celeste. In my room, on the side of the mantel, is a secret compartment. It has a book and some documents for you. I saved them for you. She nodded. I will find them. You can let go now, Uncle Lucian. Be at peace. Selene is waiting for you, she said as she cried and bent down again, kissing his cheek. I saw a final breath leave his lungs as he closed his eyes, and then the monitor started beeping before the sound of his heart rhythm flatlined. Celeste stopped glowing and I moved to catch her as she fainted. Red went to the monitor and turned it off, filling the room with silence. I looked down at Celeste. I could feel her steady heart rate. I looked back up at Red to see him staring in awe at Lucian and Celeste. Can we go to your office? I think we need to have a conversation, I said. He moved an eyebrow at me before looking back at Celeste. I think that's the understatement of the century, my friend, he said, moving towards the door. He opened it for me and as I passed he asked, "Is she okay?" "Yes, I think so." "Can you ready him for transport?" "Of course," he said and walked away. I saw two women pass by us shortly after with white cloth in their hands and tears in their eyes. Once inside his office, I laid Celeste down on the couch. I sat at the end of the couch and set her head on my lap. Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.